Chapter 92. Sama Seung sat across from Mount Hua Sect leader, Hyunjong, and carefully observed him. Hyunjong was the one who somehow managed to hold together the crumbling fragments of Mount Hua and prevented a total collapse of the sect. The sect leader of the Jongnam sect had evaluated Hyunjong as a man who had excelled in his position if only the circumstances hadn't been so disastrous. It's an over-evaluation. Hyunjong had never once shown excellence befitting his title. Anyone willing to sacrifice themselves for their responsibilities will receive a good evaluation. However, a person's greatness isn't judged by their character, but by their achievements. Sama Seung turned his head and looked around. To the left and right of Hyunjong, there were the martial arts head and the finance heads. The Un disciples, including Eunam and Eungum, were also seated here. All of Mount Hua's major figures gathered to welcome him. This wasn't the first time he had seen this. Definitely. It felt a little different than before. At the previous conference, everyone he had seen looked tired of their lives and depressed. But now, it felt like there was no pressure binding them, and a subtle relaxation was felt around them. I don't like this. Sama Seung narrowed his eyes. It didn't matter what the source of their confidence was. Whether it was money or martial arts, it would just be groundless bravado. There was no way for Mount Hua to do anything except fall. Sama Seung was dissatisfied with the confident atmosphere the elders of Mount Hua exuded. I'm not sure if you'll enjoy the tea. When Hyunjong spoke, Sama Seung lightly nodded his head. It has a deep fragrance. I am glad you liked it. Sama Seung smiled. It indeed has a deep fragrance, but I don't enjoy the scent of plum blossoms. Hyunjong's eyes widened a little. However, he soon regained his composure and spoke in a soft tone. Is there a reason? There are many scents in the forest. The scent of soil, trees, and even the dews on the leaves. But when the plum blossoms are in full bloom, their scent is the only one around. It is so thick that it obscures everything around them. Just like the Mount Hua in the past. The world is a place where we exist together to live in harmony. That is why I prefer the subtlety of green tea over the plum blossom, which breaks down that harmony. Sama Seung spoke calmly, but the undisciples couldn't hide their flushed faces. This was no different from openly talking back to the sect leader and criticizing the difference in authority. However, the Hyun elders took Sama Seung's word differently. Does he mean that back when Mount Hua had dominance, we refused to live harmoniously with others? Bringing this subject up at such a moment must mean that the Jongnam sect still hasn't forgotten their past grudges. This wasn't something the elder would dare to say in front of any other sect's elders. However, no one pointed out Sama Seung's actions. As Sama Seung said, respect depends on the one who has power. The moment one becomes unable to punish disrespect and rudeness, their authority slips into an illusion. With only a few words, Sama Seung managed to create the atmosphere he wanted and spoke with a smile. Sect leader, speak. We in the Jongnam sect have no intention of continuing this tradition and holding any more conferences after this one. Hyunjong frowned. Can I know the reason? Simple. Sama Seung smiled and spoke. It is because the exchange with Mount Hua doesn't help the Jongnam sect develop in any way. Isn't the gap between us already too wide to bridge? Hyunjong closed his eyes. It was such a disgrace to hear this and to see that smug look on his face. Even the elders sitting beside him struggled to contain their anger. This bastard! Hyunjong's beard trembled. This was intentional. How could someone say such a thing in front of their sect leader? Hyunjong slowly opened his eyes. The conference isn't just a ceremony to help with development. In the first place, this was done to help foster friendship between our two sects and grow closer. Isn't that just a facade? Sama Seung cut off Hyunjong's words. This! Hyunjong was boiling past the point of no return when Hyun-sang pressed his knee down, begging him not to act out of line. Hyun-young looked at Hyun-sang and then at Hyun-jung as he bit his lower lip. Isn't he overdoing this? Who didn't know that the two sects were as incompatible as oil and water? Even Mount Hua was keenly aware of that fact. Mount Hua is a sect that boasts its history and tradition. Although it's no longer there, Mount Hua's name proudly stood alongside the 9 great sects and had aimed to be the greatest of them all. Even if it wasn't Mount Hua, but some lesser sect instead, it was impolite to behave like this to their face. Sama-seung couldn't be ignorant of what a wicked deed he was committing. Sama-seung glanced at Hyun-young and smiled. Despite understanding the deeper meaning behind that smirk, Hyun-young couldn't do anything but tighten his grip and endure. Martial arts sects are ruthless. Those who lack strength have no choice but to endure humiliation from the powerful. After glancing at each of the people gathered in the room, Sama-seung continued. The Jongnam sect and Mount Hua have never had a good relationship. To be honest, wouldn't it be more accurate to say that we are closer to being enemies? I'm sure that those in this room likely want to eat me alive and chew me down to the bone. It's not that bad. Then, is there anyone here who has good feelings towards me? No. Does anyone have any good feelings towards the Jongnam sect itself? No one answered. It wasn't difficult to answer yes, but why should they lie? They knew the truth, and so did Sama-seung. There is nothing more futile than trying to reconnect a thread which is already severed. Sama-seung's voice was firm, as if everything had been decided, and this was just a notice. When an elder speaks with such confidence, it usually means that the decision has already been settled, and they're simply relaying the message. So this wasn't just Sama-seung's will, but that of the entire Jongnam sect. Furthermore, the Jongnam sect was officially saying that they would stand atop Mount Hua and put them under their feet. A declaration that they would no longer regard Mount Hua as competition in the future. It was disgraceful, completely humiliating. And when no one dared to speak, Eunam spoke up. Isn't this a bit too sudden? It should have been done already. Elder. Seeing that Eunam didn't back down, Sama-seung glanced at him as if looking down on him. Then, do you think Mount Hua has the qualifications to compete with the Jongnam sect? Eunam went silent. He couldn't answer that. With a smile, Sama-seung continued. I think the Jongnam sect has done everything we could to treat Mount Hua with utmost kindness until now. Utmost kindness? You are acting too much. As Eunam raised his voice, Sama-seung laughed. What is too much? The Jongnam sect has forgotten the grudges of the past and helped Mount Hua till now. In fact, isn't it unfair for us to continue like this with Mount Hua? The conference has always been held in Mount Hua, and we've even provided a certain degree of wealth whenever we travel here for the event. Yet, despite our kindness, you still choose to blame us. This wasn't right. Eunam ground his teeth. The reason why the conference was held in Mount Hua was obvious. Jongnam did it to come and ridicule the crumbling Mount Hua and to show off their own martial arts. The wealth they provided as support to Mount Hua was just a pretense of keeping the sect from refusing to hold the conference. Sect leader. Sama-seung spoke resolutely. It might be hard to understand, but allow me to simplify it. Once you see the results of this conference, you will be the first to ask that this never happens to Mount Hua again. Think carefully about this if you don't want to ruin the children. Sama-seung got up from his seat, then left the room without letting his mood be affected by the change of atmosphere. While everyone else was too shocked and didn't know what to do, Hyun-jung asked the question. Is this path the final one which the Jongnam sect has chosen? Sama-seung stopped walking and slowly turned his head to look back. Hyunjong's expressionless face left Sama-seung unable to discern the intentions behind his question. That isn't up to me to decide. With that, the foreign elder opened the door and left the room. Anguish filled the faces of those who were left behind. How can they say such a thing? Hyunyoung couldn't hold back his anger and slammed the table, resulting cracks to appear on the table. But no one thought of blaming him. Eungum opened his mouth with a heavy feeling. Every time the conference is held, they've always been aggressive, but this is the first time they've acted so viciously. That's right, this is over the line. How can a mere elder speak like that to the sect leader? Isn't the Jongnam sect supposed to come and relay this directly? No one could hold back their anger and continued adding to each other's grievances. Among them, only Hyunjong quietly shook his head with a sad face. Leave it alone. But sect leader, words are sometimes spoken in vain. Would our words have any meaning now? Eunam bowed his head. The others also bowed, their faces shifting between expressions of anguish and fury. Hyunjong said, I can tolerate any amount of disgrace. Even if they spit back in my face, I can smile back at them. That isn't what I'm worried about right now. Then, I'm worried about the children. Eunam's eyes trembled. Looking at how he said it directly, surely the conference will be extremely daunting this time. I can endure the insults they cast on me, but what should I do if our children are going to suffer too? Hyunjong's face turned bitter. As a sect leader of a weak sect, the burden he had to endure was too heavy. Then, even now, Eunam kept his mouth shut. He wanted to say, then we should stop the conference now, but before he could even finish speaking, he realized what situation they were in. It was the disgrace, worse than death for those learning martial arts, to give up in fear of an opponent. Moreover, the children can understand the situation well enough. If they are asked to surrender without a proper match, this will haunt them for the rest of their lives. My sins are too great. Hyunjong sighed deeply. Nobody could find any words to comfort him, and so everyone decided to remain silent. Eungum, who was quietly listening to the conversation, spoke up at that moment. Sect leader, there is no need to think like that. Hyunjong's eyes turned to Eungum. They want to show a clear gap between Mount Hua and themselves in order to spread the news that we're no longer worthy of being a prestigious sect within Shaanxi. It would be a decisive blow for our sect, which has already fallen so far from our peak. Isn't that what they're aiming for? True, but we've run out of tricks up our sleeve. We don't need any tricks. Wouldn't it be enough as long as we don't let them win so easily? Sect leader. Seeing Hyunjong at a loss of words, Eungum slightly smiled as he spoke. Trust the children. Maybe we'll receive some good news. Eungum smiled as he received everyone's gazes filled with suspicion. Now, it's your turn to prove yourself, Chongmyeong.